Great. Yes. So tonight we're going to be looking at slavery and the degree to which we are complicit in things that seem very far removed from us. And we're going to start off with a fairly short TED Talks video about the North at the time of the Civil War and the degree to which the North basically helped support the economic system that depended on slavery in the South. So the traditional story of the good guys and bad guys, as it were, of those fighting slavery and such is not at all what was going on. And we'll take a look at that, in fact, now. So Mark, you want to cue up the first video at this point? And we'll get started. And I need to I forgot to pull up the link. I'll pull that up now so I can paste the link into chat. Just bear with me a moment while I do that.
Yes, and these will be posted in the recording information, but this is Slavery in the North, What You Didn't Learn in History Class by Christopher Lehman, and it's TEDx St. Cloud.
Yes, I'm just copying and I'll paste the link into the browser. Just a quick second here. So you're welcome to either view this through through right now here, or you can go ahead and watch it on your own computer and return. So just a moment while I pull up. Okay, so here's the link in chat for those of you that would prefer to view it directly. And we're going to be stopping the recording during the video so that for copyright reasons. Started. Right. So Manuel made the remark at the beginning of the video when the speaker mentioned how schools teach slavery. I recalled someone mentioning that Germany teaches all the horrors of Nazism to help populations not make the mistake again. I'm reminded of visiting the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., which is a very powerful experience. What are some thoughts about this video? Was there anything surprising here or that caught your thought? Feel free to unmute and share that way or type into chat, whatever you prefer.
I think it was eye-opening to see how things are indirectly impacted, even though you may not directly have some kind, your hands in something, actions that you may be partaking in could contribute to a bigger issue. And that same concept could be applied to a lot of things, a lot of issues globally. So that was a pretty big takeaway that I got from that.
Yeah. It's a good argument for the importance of global perspectives, isn't it? One of the pillars of the honors program, to be globally aware. I have friends that say, well, I'm gonna avoid the news. I don't want to pay attention to it. And I think, well, wow, you have the luxury to do that, but that doesn't change the degree to which we're complicit in these things, as we're going to see in just a few minutes. Other thoughts? Oh, here's some posts. Thank you. Latasha says, I agree that knowledge is the key to not repeat the same mistakes. But each person needs to uphold this thought process. And Timothy says, I believe that what we need to do as well, that is what we need to do as well. Remember the truths, no matter how ugly, not just the point of view from the victors. Yeah, we think about how, and this gets at this debate over Confederate war statues, which were actually mostly put up in the 1930s and such. They weren't put up after the Civil War. That was a big issue here in the South where I am, is what are those statues really signifying, and who controls the past? Because how the story of the past is told makes a big difference. I was just thinking of this yesterday in light of a slightly different topic, which is the treatment of American Indians, and how many children of American Indians were ripped away from their families and sent to these boarding schools. And one of the worst boarding schools is in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And right now it's still there, but it's not a National Historic Site. We're not acknowledging, the government refuses to acknowledge that part of our history. We're not telling that part of the story about what happened, the horrors that happened there, where the Indians were basically tried to be turned into Americans by making them not speak their language, punishing them horribly. That part of the story. So the past is still alive, and the stories we tell matter. I think it runs deeper than just the North taking money from the South, Latasha says. I completely agree. There's a lot that isn't told in of that part of our past. So yeah, James says learning the complete history of slavery is important to understand how it relates to U.S. history. Many think that rich plantation owners were solely responsible. Absolutely. And the fact here in Georgia, there weren't that many really rich plantation owners. There weren't that many that were extremely wealthy, but yet slavery was so permeated the society.
Can I interrupt?
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry. I agree with what you're saying about telling the whole story. My husband's Native American, and the stories have been told throughout his family. And what you don't learn in the history books is the diseases that came with the Native Americans, and how horribly Columbus, for example, bringing the diseases to the Native Americans and them dying in massive graves and just kind of taking the land. And I see it with slavery. My kids are in middle school and they're not teaching the whole story. They're just the North freed the South and this and that. And when I said it runs deeper than that, there have been accounts where they have found that people from the North would go down to the South and buy slaves and then call them servants in their houses. And it was okay because they would pay them very little or give them room and board. And yeah, they didn't whip them, but they were still servants and they still didn't get a say. And so not telling the whole story takes the honor away from those people that suffered. And it's kind of like hiding a lie, in my opinion.
A lot of the Northern abolitionists, all those wonderful abolitionists, a vast percentage of them did not think that Africans should belong here in the United States. They wanted to see them loaded onto boats and sent to Liberia or somewhere else, just kicked out of the country. William Lloyd Garrison, he's one of my heroes, was one of the few that really stood up and argued against that. But so even in the North, there was the spirit of abolitionism. Wasn't really all just about like equality or anything.
This is Kathy. I like what Brian just said in the chat, is that the past is an opportunity to learn and grow and balance the imbalances that have happened in the past. If we shut down and we're not open to both views, then that doesn't make us any better than our ancestors. And then how do we teach our children the importance of diversity and inclusion if we are not willing as human beings and individuals to be empathetic to others, no matter your race, religion, etc. And I think that's where we as a whole can be better. And it's not just here in the United States. I think it's worldwide, because there's so much that is happening on a daily basis. Hey, I try to avoid the news sometimes, but it's out there. Who doesn't?
Can I comment on this?
Please.
All right. So I think the video was great. I think that the gentleman spoke on some very interesting topics and definitely provided a nice brief history. I do feel though that a lot of slavery conversation kind of gets stuck in the past. And what I mean by that is, obviously, we want to understand what happened in history so that we can move forward. And, I'm a 32-year-old African-American male that lives in Pennsylvania. On the East Coast and in a lot of other places, slavery still goes on and it still exists. It's just, I feel like the government kind of put it on paper that it was illegal and figured out a way to turn it into something different. Minorities still suffer a higher rate of police brutality than any other race. Minorities are still incarcerated more than any other race for, you know, you look at crimes like possession of marijuana. There's people that went to jail and did 10 or 20 years for possession of marijuana, which is something that now, since the government figured out a way to make money off of it, it's now being legalized. But those same people that went to jail for it, they can't vote, they can't apply for loans to actually be in the industry that they originally went to jail for in the first place. You know, so I feel like there's a lot of different avenues where modern day slavery still exists. And I read a book last year called White Fragility. And it was a very good book. I suggest everybody, you know, take a moment and read that book, because it really opens your mind about things that we do and we see and we say on a daily basis, but we don't really realize what others are going through.
Yes, that's an excellent point about the degree to which a lot of this is the legacy, the nature of this is really still malingers. I know that when I came to the town of Palmetto, where I am right now, I was working at a Montessori school with young children, and older elementary age, 4th, 5th graders, and we were going to take on this project of updating this book on the history of the community. And this book is all about the story of the community. Nowhere in that book is the fact that at one point around turn of the century, around 1900, there was a group of Black people that were brutally lynched. And in fact, not only were they burned alive, but there were trains run from Atlanta, special trains run down so that people could come and view the spectacle. There's no memorial to that. There's no monument to that. It isn't in the history. Now that's in the past too, but that just is connecting the dots here from slavery. Now, okay, now we're talking 1900. Now we're talking today. And yeah, the things change their form and change their shape and maybe get a little bit less overt in some respects, but it's still very much with us. That's something we'll look at more in an international way in our next video in just a few minutes. So, yeah, our prison system, Eva mentions, is very much legalized slavery. Yeah, the fact that prisoners can be forced to work for a few cents a day, basically, they're compelled to work, you know, for way below. There's no minimum pay there. You know, yeah, the degree to which that there's obviously a horrendous imbalance percentage-wise, particularly for Black males in our prison systems. It's very troubling. Anyone else like to speak on this video? If not, we'll go on to the next one. We're going to transition.
Yeah, I would like to say something quick about the video.
Please do.
Growing up, I'm a Black male. I grew up in the rural South. I'm also a descendant of Native Americans. I have kids in school now, and I remember being in school. They're briefly going over Black history and slavery, but it's not so much taught now because my kids, they don't know too much about it other than what I've taught them. And it's a rough subject for me because my dad, he grew up through segregation. He's 75, and he does not like slavery. He does not like looking at movies. He don't like looking at history. But he always told me that I need to learn it myself. And so I've always did my own research, and as my kids get older, I've tried to teach them as well, trying to see where they come from, because it kind of has motivated me, because I think about it all the time of not just what my parents grew up on the farm, came really from nothing. And, you know, being that my grandma was Native American, I don't even know her side of family, because in my town, they didn't keep a record, birth certificate, marriage licenses. The only thing I know that has my grandmother's name on it is the marriage license when she married my grandfather. And so that kind of learning that history, even though it's not proud history, it kind of motivates me. You know, that's part of the reason why I went back to school, was to better myself. And I always think about what my parents went through and my ancestors went through, and it kind of makes my daily struggles it kind of negates my struggles, because you just think about what they had to go through on a daily basis. My dad tells me stories of what he's been through and what he's witnessed, and it's like I can imagine, you know, my dad being scared to go somewhere. That's my hero. You know, he's always been my hero. He can always do I've never seen nothing that he can't do. And to hear him tell a story about when he was scared about stuff, you know, being profiled and dealing with racism, it makes you think. But I mean, I say that to say that you can use that as motivation as well, because it has motivated me coming from that type of background.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Thank you. We're going to shift now to slavery in the present day. This next video is not a TED Talk. I'm waiting for, and I fully expect there'll be a TED Talk soon. Choosing this video was inspired by a book that recently just came out like a week ago, called Cobalt Red, which I encourage you to take a look at if you get the chance. Let me type that in. Actually, I'll go ahead and type that title into chat. This is a very difficult video to watch. It's 6 minutes. All I can say is it's short, but it's about cobalt mining. And those of you that aren't aware, electric cars aren't new. There were actually electric cars back in 1880. By 1910, 30% of the cars in America were electric. And then the internal combustion engine really just took off, literally and figuratively, as roads were built in America, and it was just cheaper. And we're coming back around now to electric cars. It's the green, it's the sustainable, it's wonderful. But you can't have electric cars without cobalt. Cobalt is necessary for the cathodes on the batteries. Large amounts of it is necessary for electric cars. It's also in the batteries of our smartphones. It's in the batteries of our iPads or tablets. It drives modern life. Over half the cobalt in the world comes from the Congo in Central Africa, where the mines are overwhelmingly owned by Chinese, run by the Chinese, but with the complicit support of a very corrupt regime and a very corrupt police force. And the result is the atrocities of incredibly young children who are spending their days and their very short lives mining cobalt. They're called artisan miners. Artisan, I think of artisan bread as this like this neat home style bread. No, artisan miners means villagers that are absolutely destitute, going out barefoot to the mines. And we'll take a look at that video now. This is not, I want to caution you, this is not an easy video to watch. Shall we turn off the recording and resume? Yeah. This is a tough one. I think what makes it more difficult is to know that it's 5 years old and things have gotten worse, if anything. And the demand for cobalt is rapidly accelerating. So there were 2010, I think there were a few thousand electric cars in the United States. Now there's millions, or in the world, there were now millions of them. All of them require cobalt, just all about all the cobalt's coming out of the Congo. So this has gotten worse. This has gotten basically no resolution. What's happened is that all of the companies that are complicit are claiming, oh, we don't allow that. We don't do that. But if you sneak in, which the author of Cobalt Red did, and you interview people, and he interviewed them following Institutional Review Board standards, and he was very careful with his interviews, you will find the same stories and the same kinds of things. You know, he observed horrendous atrocities. He observed a child lying dead in the mud of a mine today. So this is still going on. And the problem is that it's all gets, as it mentioned in the video, it all gets tied up the material coming out of the actual mines gets mixed in with the material coming from these artisan mines and goes down the supply chain, and you don't know. You don't know where it's coming from and what's going on, and there's deniability everywhere. Everybody's claiming nothing's going on. But if you try to go there and observe this, by the way, the police will stop you. They will confiscate any cameras. They will do anything to prevent you from actually observing what's going on there. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. It's very difficult. I'm an environmental scientist. Mark is too. We're both advocates for green energy, but how do we advocate green energy when this is what's going on?
Hey, Clifford, it's Linda. I look at Carolyn's comment about electric cars really being touted as the solution for climate change, and understanding what the true danger of to our humanity in mining the cobalt. I mean, it worries me because here in Washington State, there's all these well-meaning do-gooders who are passing legislation that we're going to outlaw the purchase of gas-powered vehicles, within the next 5 or 10 years. And the downside of that, I mean, everyone feels really great about that, but we're whitewashing the actual cost of getting the cobalt. So it's like we're exchanging one evil for another, and without having the understanding of the true physical and human cost of mining cobalt, people are just going to be blissfully thinking, oh, look at this great thing that I'm doing for the environment, when they're actually unintentionally fostering human suffering.
I appreciate the thought that a truly wicked problem, wicked in every possible sense. How do we balance? And maybe it goes back to this awareness that all of our actions we're complicit. All of our actions that seem to be done for the best of intentions. We have to really dig deep and know and study and find out. And it's so difficult now because there have been songs about this. There's a singing group from the 20, 30 years ago, Sweet Honey in the Rock, which they wrote a wonderful song. You should Google and look for it. It's called Are My Hands Clean? And it's the song, they sing the story of this shirt and the cotton for the shirt and the global system it moves through to get grown and manufacture the various parts of it and manufacture, and then you go and buy it and wear the shirt. And are my hands clean? And you find out that there's all these things that have happened that you don't know about. All these people that have been laboring, making no money, the environmental destruction that's been involved, all this harm, and we don't know about any of it. We're kept from it. We're shielded. It's just, how different is that from the fact that landfills, where I live at least, I can't see the landfill. There's this lovely curtain of trees. I can't see the local landfill because it's hidden. So I don't have to think about it. Out of sight, out of mind. This is in Congo. How many of us are going to visit Congo in our lifetimes? Out of sight, out of mind. It's very easy. And now it's insidious because it's this global culture now, so that our decisions are affecting things that are happening halfway around the world. But we're not, unless we're making an effort to know about it, we can be blissfully ignorant. Ignorance really is bliss in a case like this. There's some wonderful posts being made here, and I want to honor them. And it's sad to exchange a peace of mind for crimes against humanity. Latasha says, yeah. Innovation is the best option. Gerardo notes, a battery that doesn't need cobalt at the same time makes available populations like that cheap energy to other endeavors to generate wealth for this kid. Yeah, unfortunately, there hasn't been a good substitute for cobalt found. Lithium cobalt battery, there's 3 kinds of electric batteries that are very effective, and they all require cobalt. There's just there's nothing to replace that with right now. And most all decisions leading to economic growth do not value life. Capitalism and comfort come at a cost. Wow, it's well said. So what do? Any thoughts? Do we turn our back on? Do we just go out and trade in our electric car for a gas guzzling What do we do? I don't, by the way, I don't have an answer. This is a wicked problem. And it's those of you that have taken honors 270, this is a wicked problem. I don't know. But I guess the first part of the problem is to become aware that it's there. Any thoughts though on where do we go from here?
Let's say robotics.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's difficult too because the companies are Chinese. So it's not, I mean, I wouldn't say it would be better if they were American companies. That would be even worse to think about in a way, but that gives very little leverage. But of course we're buying from them, right? Our American companies are buying from them. So we need a system like the Fair Trade Program for cobalt. And Mark, there actually is. The problem is there's certifications. There's various certifications that these companies make about their product. The fact is they're lies. Because we would need, and what we need is we need it to become transparent and open to the point that cameras are allowed at these mines so that what is going on can be observed. But it's a system of, I watched another video about the same issue that was over 30 minutes long, and it was really good, but it was too long to watch tonight. And this guy a year ago came in and documented what was going on, and he had to pay bribe after bribe after bribe to policemen. He was pulled over at one point, had to give them a bribe. It's a system that's extremely corrupt. This one woman, her child, a 13-year-old son, was killed when a mine tailings pile collapsed. He was digging in the tailings pile to get some cobalt to feed his family, and it collapsed and killed him. And they've taken the body and buried it. And she was finally able to get a little cross to put on the gravestone. And one of the local chiefs, who was corrupt, demanded a bribe in order to let her go to the cemetery and do that. It's where do you begin when there's that kind of situation? And this is a legacy. Those of you that want to read another really depressing book, King Leopold's War, I think it's called, about Leopold and the Belgian Congo, which is what the Congo used to be, and the horrors of how people were treated then, how the Congolese people were treated then. And of course, it wasn't that much better under Mobutu Sese Seko, the Zaire, which America's propped up because Mobutu said, well, I'm gonna resist communism, but you have to give me money. So he had multiple homes and dozens of cars, and everyday people in Congo continued to live in poverty, and we basically paid him off. That's the government. That was back in the 80s and 90s. Yeah. There's some other wonderful, powerful thoughts here. Shall we watch one more video? This last one, we only have a few minutes to discuss it at the end. Or if we'd like to discuss further, this one. This last one's a little bit more hopeful. It's a TED Talk from a woman who has been involved in an organization that's working on making slavery in places like England visible today, or trafficking. But you'll hear a mention in this video of the Congo. There is mention of what's going on there a few minutes into the video, so be listening for that. Shall we go ahead and view the last one, Mark? And I will powerful thoughts shared in the chat. There's some powerful thoughts shared in the chat. I'd forgotten that the talk includes a UK phone number. This is the phone number for the National Human Trafficking Hotline here in the United States. There are also state. If you Google, you'll find that various states have their own as well, in addition to that. So things to be aware of and things to research more. And I see some of you have shared some facts about that. In Kansas, over 200 children were saved in a city near me from human trafficking. Wow. Yeah, that closing quote, Wendy, was really powerful. And I really appreciate this thought too. Timothy says, it's our clothes, our electronic devices, our need to consume that leads to the expansion and utilization of these environments and practices. We're complicit because we support it without realizing or understanding. Yeah, powerful stuff, powerful stuff. You know, I think we can all find our own small ways to resist that. My personal hero, Thoreau, finding out that he was paying a tax that was going to support a war that he did not approve of, refused to pay the tax, spent a night in jail, pretty famous event. But whatever we can do, whatever small things we can do to resist, I think is the beginning. Whatever changes we can make, it's a start. And that's the way with all wicked problems. You have to take, how am I going to tame? What am I going to do? What little piece of it am I going to chip away at? And spread awareness, absolutely, so important, Mark. But it's some powerful stuff. And yes, that thought that you can't say you didn't know. No. Any closing thoughts from anyone about just kind of about any of the videos about tonight's? I really want to thank you all for coming. This was not. I promise future TED Talk nights that are going to be a little easier, but this was not one of them. And I honor you all for choosing to be here this hour. Mark, do you have the link? I forgot to bring the link for the PLA credit. Those of you that are in honors, I forgot to take a poll. I don't know if any of you are currently not thinking about joining honors and haven't. And if so, I'd be happy to stay around. Mark would as well, and answer any questions about the honors program. Absolutely. And thank you. In the process of joining honors, Curtis, welcome and thank you. Thank you to all of you. Zakaya, you're very welcome. I appreciate all of you. And if you need us, we're here at honors. We're reachable anytime. And I hope to see some of you in honors 270 and 280 and 490 in the future. Mark, thank you so much for your help this evening.
Yep, you're welcome. Thanks everybody for sharing. I did post the link to the Qualtrics honors PLA tracking survey. If you are in the honors program and you are tracking this as one of your hours. But yes, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.